So welcome everybody. My name is Will Moss. I'm actually the founder and CEO of HBCUconnect.com. We are the largest HBCU related organization on the internet, but we also help African Americans and other minorities land great career opportunities with great companies all over the country. So today at this particular event, we are introducing you to several teams that are hiring software engineers within Microsoft. So not only are we going to give you a chance to learn a little bit more about each of those organizations, we're also going to give you a chance to ask questions towards the end of the webinar here. So first of all, I wanted to kind of jump into sort of what this evening will entail. So I'll do a brief welcome, just so you guys are kind of familiar. I'll set the stage for the context for this particular event. Then I'll introduce the Microsoft team, and each one of the teams that are represented by individuals on those teams will kind of go into the details of what they do, the types of people that they hire, what engineers on their teams are responsible for. Then we'll sort of do a panel discussion where I put together some questions that I think will help you guys get more familiar, not only with Microsoft as a company and the company culture, but also get familiar with some of the personalities on the teams and the organizations that are represented. So we'll have sort of a panel discussion and we'll get some interesting insight into Microsoft. And then we'll go into the live Q&A. And so the Q&A, the way it's going to work, I'm going to ask everybody, like I said, to stay on mute and just use the chat window to ask questions once we go into the live Q&A. And then we'll sort of end the event, and I'll sort of keep track of time as we're doing the Q&A, and then we'll go into next steps as far as hopefully, what I hope to have happen after this particular virtual event is that you guys have a better idea of Microsoft as a company, what it would like to be, what it would be like to work for Microsoft and these particular organizations that are represented, and then you'll have interest in applying for opportunities and interviewing. So we'll have a special link set up where you can submit your information, indicating that you have interest in interviewing. And then some of you will be able to interview for these particular organizations after this call. So just to give you a little bit of context, originally we were supposed to have an on-site event in Austin, Texas. But as you guys know, there's a lot going on with people being worried about the coronavirus. So with respect to that and the necessary travel for people, we decided to have a virtual event rather than canceling it. So kudos to Microsoft for their continued efforts to connect with African American talent and diverse talent and to continue to provide opportunities by not canceling the event and actually going virtual. So that is the reason why we're actually going virtual, because typically the events that we do are on site in different cities all over the country. That gives you a chance to learn the same information that we're going to present tonight, but then to be able to network with your peers and also network with the team. And the way we're going to try to do that tonight is through the Q&A. But that is the reason why we're having the virtual event. So wanted to just welcome everybody and thank you guys for taking the time out of your schedules. And without further ado, hopefully you guys kind of got in on all of my welcome and my intro. But now I'm going to hand it over to the different teams that we have available. So look, just a quick run through of the teams that are here on the call, or the organizations that are here on the call, and those that will be represented. And then I'll hand it over to each of those organizations. So first of all, we have Larry Wiltshire from Office Experience Organization, OXO. And we have Venkat Narayanan from Customer Success Engineering. We've got Corey Thwaites from ODSP, which is OneDrive SharePoint. Anthony Henderson from Edge, which is Microsoft Edge. Probably a lot of you used Edge to log into the event this evening. And then we have Keaton Lamba from Microsoft Teams, which is pretty cool because we're actually using the Microsoft Teams software to host this virtual event. So that the Microsoft Teams actually came to the rescue for our particular event. So thanks to Microsoft Teams. So all of these teams are represented. All of them are hiring software engineers. And this is a special effort for those teams to connect with you guys as diverse candidates for these different job opportunities. So without further ado, I'd like to pass the microphone virtually over to Larry Wilcher with Office Experience Organization.
All right, mic check. Good.
Yes, sir.
All right, because I've got 2 layers of muting going on, and sometimes the service headphones get excited. So thanks, Will, for the intro. As he said, I'm Larry Wilcher, and I'm from the OXO organization. You hear the brief description in the name Office Experience Organization. What that really boils down to is Office. You know, the traditional suite you're used to working with, the Word, the Excel, the PowerPoint, the Visio, all that good stuff. And that's the org I sit in. I personally am a service engineer. Senior service engineer is my title. What that probably translates most closely to, kind of in industry standard things, if a service engineer is not a familiar term to you, is site reliability engineer, or a kind of a solutions architect. So my job day to day is kind of on the underneath platform. I help pull things together, this service, this compute, this networking, yada, 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 to get everything up and running. But more generally, so taking a step back, OXO is Office. Now, you may hear that and you're like, well, I didn't come to this to hear about working on Win32 again. I don't want to deal with Windows APIs. Well, that's not Office. That's not the only thing Office is anymore. These days, we're actually one of the big pushes out there in the web. And that's actually the team I'm specifically on. Office on the Web is the marketing term for my product. And we have all kinds of opportunities in that world for doing some Node.js, some React, some all that kind of stuff, to where you can work on web clients. You can work on the Android client. You can work on the iOS client. You could work on the Mac client. We have opportunities everywhere across the org, because as one of our company mottos is, we want to bring productivity to everywhere. We want to get out of the way and let you be able to be productive on any platform you choose. And Office is one of the leaders in providing that experience. As far as what a software engineer typically works on in our world, so it's actually that's hard to pin down to one specific thing, right? Because I'm a service engineer, but I'm actually developing infrastructure as a code, right? Like, because no single human is going to go manage 100,000 servers. That's roughly how many we have out there. So you've got to develop automation and abstract configs and ways, and you just basically have to have your configuration working as a code, right? So that's kind of the platform level stuff and kind of shared infrastructure type things. Then we also have, like we spoke of, the clients, and they're working in React, they're working in Chromium, they're working in Electron, they're working in Swift, or whatever the given language is for the given platform we need to mess around with. So we need UI expertise as well, right? Because someone's got to deal with the viewport and getting the app to actually boot in a given browser. And we also have folks that are doing a lot of work in connected kind of augmented services. So think of the resume assistant in Word, right? That actually has some intelligence underneath it that takes what you're giving it and applies some machine learning models and figures out what your intent might be and gives you a couple of templates back. Things like that. And there's tons of situations around there where we're developing new ideas. We're always open to new ideas for connected services to make it easier for the end user, the information worker is another term you may know, to get their job done faster and easier with less effort. And as far as what kind of talent we're looking for, it's honestly, we're just looking for people that can solve problems intelligently. We'll find somewhere to put you. Don't worry about that. If you can take a problem, break it down into its pieces, and come up with a solution that'll actually work, that's about the end of the story. We're not looking for particular focus areas, because I'm working in PowerShell 1 minute, working in Batch the next, working in C# the next, working in React the next. It's minute to minute. It's moving. It's dynamic. It's exciting, and you'll always have something great to work on. I was kind of put on blast, so I didn't have much. I'm kind of running this off by cuff, so that's all I've got for the moment. I think we'll get more excited in the Q&A.
Hey, so let me ask, one thing I'm going to ask each of the presenters is, how did you come to end up working at Microsoft? Just so people can kind of get get an idea who's represented.
Okay.
Representatives.
Yeah, I have a somewhat unique story. Some of you may have heard if you had popped on early enough. Um, Will was mentioning an HBCU grad, and I was like, I'm not actually a grad. So I have a semi-unique story. But I am a not entirely alum of Xavier University, Louisiana. I actually came in through the intern program way back in 2002. Um, and I interned in office or offered in the old QFE team, the quick fix engineering. So like large customer comes in, says something's broken. We get the bug, we make sure it's a bug, we fix it, and we release a patch. Not the big month and months. This is like tactical stuff. That's what I interned with way back when. And then life got in the way. Couldn't finish school. Had to go do some other stuff. Found myself back connected up with Microsoft at roughly 2011, doing compliance work. That's for the past decade or so before I moved back into engineering. I was doing compliance work, and my old vendor company picked up a big contract to help Office get themselves ready to provide services to the federal government, because that requires a certain set of requirements. You got to be ready for it. You can look it up. It's called FedRAMP. And we have public documentation on the different pieces of FedRAMP that we enable and all that great stuff. But we did that for a while. And then I kind of just converted over to the compliance team within Office 365, which is the service suite. OXO is part of that. ODSP is part of that. Teams is part of that, so on and so forth. And I converted to a full-timer and just sort of just kept doing my same job for another 2 years before I made myself over to Office Online, because I was kind of wanted to get my hands on the keyboard again. And I landed in the infrastructure team because that's where the compliance expertise that's local to the product lives. And I also just kind of was helping with the infrastructure as a code. So didn't graduate, but I knew the right people to keep me connected, kept working at it, just kind of climbing the ladder on my way there and bounced my way back.
Excellent. And just to reiterate, can you talk a little bit about the environment? So the technology that you guys are using, the languages, programming languages that you guys are typically taking advantage of.
I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier. It's almost whatever's necessary for the moment because we have clients on every platform, right? So an Android, it's a mix of Java. It might be some Swift. It might be some Go, I think is their language. I can't remember the various languages. There's definitely going to be some React and some native and whatnot going on. So JavaScript as the overall language, but those are different libraries within that. We definitely have a lot of C# because there's a lot of .NET going on. I personally am in PowerShell day to day, but that's because I'm underneath, so I'm doing scripting for automation. We also do we have some Python, we have some Perl, so stuff, the things you guys might be familiar with. It's really whatever the moment supports, because we also have a lot of Linux shops that are working kind of still in C++, because they're sitting on a Kubernetes cluster, and that's just the best way to interact with that type of thing. So it's that's what I mean. It's really dynamic, and we just need the expertise to solve problems. If you can solve the problem, you can learn the syntax. So it kind of is, the language is kind of immaterial, but definitely C# familiarity will help you a lot. But not knowing C# is not something that's really a blocker. So don't worry about that.
Excellent. Excellent. Appreciate that intro to the Office Experience Organization.
Right.
So next up, we'll have presentation on the Customer Success Engineering Team, CSE, from Venkat.
Hi, I'm Venkat Narayanan. I'm a group engineering manager in customer success engineering. The name, it's not very clear what we do, but essentially think of us as the team that helps customers after you've bought Office 365 or Microsoft 365. So if you buy Office 365 for home or Office 365 for a business, once you've bought it, you need to manage it. You need to add users to it. You need to set it up. You need to get support. You need documentation for it. You need globalization and localization for the software that you have. So all of that falls within the customer success engineering organization. So we kind of support people once they have bought Office till they leave Office 365. Hopefully, they don't leave Office 365, but we support the entire life cycle for customers. So a lot of our code is customer facing. So for example, I own the administration interface for Office 365. So if you have Office 365, then you need a place where you can manage Office 365, and that's the piece that my team owns. My peer teams own things like support UX and support tooling, as well as measuring satisfaction with Office 365. How do we measure it? What do we use that measurement for? How do we identify problem areas within the product and then improve those problem areas so satisfaction increases? So we have another team, which I think is one of the cooler teams I've seen, is a team that is responsible for translation. So this team used to do localization and globalization. So basically Office and Windows and all that stuff, if you want it in different languages, this is the team that used to do that. They still do it, but the cool thing they do now is, for example, in Skype or in Teams, you can do real-time translation. So if I'm speaking in English and you don't know English, and you want to translate it to French, you can translate in real time to French and then read it. So this team does that work. They also do real time language translation in PowerPoint and in Word and things like that. So which is a lot of machine learning and a lot of natural language processing. So that's a really cool thing in the overall organization. So I know a lot more about my team, but I will hold on to that for questions later. So that gives you a very high level sense of the products and services that we are responsible for. Almost all of our products are online products, service products. So we have very little things that we ship to customers as bits that they install on their local machine. Most of it is services that runs on servers. And I'll second Larry, the distributed scale that we need to manage makes it very challenging to keep it running and keep it scaling up. For example, this last couple of weeks, we have had a huge increase in traffic, and we have had to scale our services and make sure that we are still up and running while people work from home and uses a lot more. In terms of what kind of software engineers we look for, or what kind of talent we look for, I'll second Larry again. We just look for people that can solve problems. If you know any language, any computer science language, then you can learn anything else. It's not that big of a deal. So my team uses C# and React. And most of the teams in CSE use essentially C# and React. But if you don't know those two things, you're still fine. I actually just hired someone 2 weeks ago that does not know either C# or React. And that person knows Java. And if you know Java, it's not that hard to learn. C#, it's just slightly different syntax. And slightly different function names. And if you know one language, you can learn something else. A lot of people in my team came from Windows. So they used to work on C++, and now they do C# and React. And if they can learn, someone else that doesn't know C# and React can learn that too. So we just look for people that are solid developers, solid engineers, and can show that curiosity to learn something new. So if you are curious about how things work and if you want to continuously learn, then you will do just fine. In terms of a typical day in the life, I'm not going to talk about my typical day. My typical day is mostly meetings, so I'll talk about an engineer's typical day. So most engineers in my team, they will spend roughly 80% of their time working on some code. So they will be thinking about a problem, figuring out what the best way to solve that problem is, and how to implement that in the code base that we have. Some of their time is spent working with other people, collaborating with other people, trying to figure out solutions for problems. So most of your time is spent on solving problems. So I think that covers most of it. I had a presentation that was going to give an overview of the org, but I don't think that is a necessary thing to show at this point. But if you have any other questions for me, Will, I will answer those. If not, I'm done.
Actually, you answered all of them. So, I wanted to ask, how did you end up working for
Uh,
Microsoft? Yes.
oh, I came straight out of college. I went to school at University of Illinois, Chicago, and I came to Microsoft straight out of school. A long time ago, though, almost 20 years ago. So,
What was your major coming out of college?
my major in my master's was computer science. My undergrad was electrical engineering.
Excellent, because I think there's a lot of folks that have EE backgrounds
Yeah.
that are on the call. But
Well,
of course, nowadays a lot of EEs are doing software
yep.
engineering for hardware. So,
Yeah.
excellent. Appreciate
Yeah.
that overview.
Yeah, just don't ask me anything about electrical engineering. I don't remember any of it right now. So,
Excellent. Okay, I appreciate it. So that will conclude the overview of customer success engineering. So let's jump into OneDrive SharePoint with Corey Twaits.
Hey, oh. You guys can hear me all right? Cool. Geez, going third. Larry did such a good job, like overviewing stuff. It's hard to follow. Anyway, so what products is OneDrive SharePoint? You've probably heard of it, OneDrive SharePoint. A lot of you might use it to store your papers online, I hope, and recover them if Windows crashes. That's more or less what my role is OneDrive consumer side. There is OneDrive for business, which is kind of like merged with SharePoint, like SharePoint handles OneDrive for business. So OneDrive for consumer, everything from online, the sync client, the backend database storage, blob storage, storing your files, all that. SharePoint, their OneDrive for business, same sort of thing. They have a different architecture. I haven't seen it 100%, but I know they have a different architecture. Similar concept, sync client, store your files, metadata. And then SharePoint, everything that your parents probably use at work for their internal portal. All the OneDrive or all the SharePoint like online stuff, SharePoint on-site, on-prem, that sort of stuff. That's pretty much the products and services that is under my bubble, I'll say, or umbrella. Specifically, what I do my day-to-day is I used to be a service engineer for OneDrive consumer. They changed our title to software developer. So I've done kind of all the stuff Larry's done. Deal with the backend stuff, setting up servers, like all that sort of thing. Now I'm more or less doing code that will get us out of that business, like automatic failovers, because we have the signal when like a SQL server is going bad or something and we need to fail it over. Why do that manually when you can just write some code for it? So that's more or less what we've started doing today in our day-to-day. I wish I'd seen these questions before, then I could have thought up something good. My specific day-to-day, like today, as was mentioned before, we have increased traffic now that everybody's at home, specifically in Europe. So today I stood up 4 new clusters in Europe that are probably going to go online next week that'll add more capacity and enable OneDrive consumer to run even smoother in EMEA in Europe.
Can I ask a question related to that?
Yep.
So when you do that, do you have to coordinate with the hardware folks as well, or do you go to a team for that?
So the management and there is capacity planning done. Pretty much, I think it takes almost like 6 months or something crazy like that to get the hardware in the data center. And then literally we got an email, hey, it's 3 weeks early. You guys can start setting it up. So my build out process has been, I think I started this in like mid-February. there's a lot of hands-on manual stuff that we're doing now that I will later on get to automate. But yeah, there is that process.
How large
go
is the team that you work on?
So my specific team for the OneDrive consumer backend like team is about 20 people. We have a wider audience of like developers doing with the mobile, the front end, the sync client, probably a little over, I'd say about 120, 150 maybe. So it's a pretty big team.
So,
There,
sorry, Corey, if
Mhm.
I could jump in for a second. In terms of scaling up,
Yeah.
there are differences in different teams, right? So, for example, my team, we are on Azure. So
Yep.
we don't scale up by bringing in hardware. We just
Correct.
scale up by expanding our server count. OneDrive and Exchange and Office, they are all on bare metal. So they have to worry about how to increase capacity by bringing in hardware and everything else.
Yep. That is the difference. It's funny that you mentioned that because for like SQL servers, we run in Azure. So you just call up Azure, like, can we get 50 new database servers? And they're like, yeah. But and that literally, you just tell them like a week in advance maybe, and you can get that. But the others, we still run on physicals. We don't run on Azure in the cloud VMs and stuff. So we have to do the whole 6-month process. Any more questions?
If you want to get into what the technology stack looks like, what kind of technologies software engineers could expect to have their hands on your team.
So kind of like Larry said as well, we deal with a lot of C#, but anything else, if you're a Java, like if that's your main language, you'll just fit right in. We had an intern this summer that did a project that was, I believe, completely in React. So we deal with a lot of stuff. Really, it comes down to does the technology make sense to solve the problem? That's honestly what it comes down to. And will it fit? Do you have to jump through a lot of hoops to make it work, or does one framework fit better than the other? I mean, that's really what it is. And when it comes to coding in specific languages, like really it's logic. I say one of the best things I learned from my schooling is how to think, how to problem solve. Like I have a personal project I'm doing in Node.js. I feel like even though I have been in C++, C# world, jumping over to JavaScript world, it's like, oh, I know how to do this stuff. I just have to look for the little things the little gotchas in each language. Besides that, it's pretty much logic. And honestly, the team at OneDrive, they want that hunger. They want the hunger to learn, to try new things. Honestly, people want you to tell them why this technology is better. So they want you to become a subject matter expert when you're trying to come up with new problems to solve or technologies to use on problems. So yeah, and how I got to Microsoft. So 7 years ago, I was working a application support job. If anybody's worked a support job, they know my pain. And somebody from my church was a employee at Microsoft, and I was like, man, I'm just leveling up too fast. Like this is not even using useful skills for me. I optimized the heck out of the place while I was there, so it helped people get faster support. And then I was like, I really want to work at Microsoft. So I actually trained with him. Oops, sorry about that. I trained with him. I would drive after work over to Microsoft and we do whiteboard problems. And I did that for 6 months because I had lost all I'll say the skill needed to code. So I worked on it for 6 months driving. I was actually, oh, you guys don't have a reference point, but if you ever look up Auburn to Redmond, it's about an hour drive. So I drive an hour every day, work with him, do these problems. And then he took my resume, put it on my now boss's desk and was like, hey, give him a call. No pressure. I know he's hungry, but give him a call, see where his head's at. And if it works out, it works out. So the guy gives me a call, Brandon. We talk. He likes where my head's at. He likes the hunger. Hires me. And 7 years later, I've just been working on the team. And that's how I got there. Networking is super important, by the way.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so that answers the question as far as the type of talent you guys are looking for, people that are hungry. Can you talk though a little bit about that whiteboarding? Because a lot of people, and we'll get into this in the panel, but since you mentioned it, I figured I want to see if you could elaborate on that and how what you kind of learned what you learned in the whiteboarding, and then how that translated once you interviewed, so people can have sort of an idea of what to expect.
Yeah. If people in the chat or on the call are familiar with leak code, those types of problems, the problems like the ones where it's like a straightforward coding problem, then you have to think about the big O notation, and also there's usually always another way to solve the problem. So that's the type of whiteboarding. I would usually do the n squared time, and I'm like, yeah, it just works. It works. And then he's like, no, think about it a different way. Do that sort of thing. So that's the whiteboarding stuff that I did. When it came to interview time, honestly, a lot of people didn't give me questions like that. They gave me more behavior type questions because they wanted to see like how I would approach problems. Just like, okay, you have a server outage here and that sort of thing. They asked me more of that. Only one guy asked me a coding problem. I don't even remember what it was. But for service engineering, they ask you less of that. For software engineering, they will ask you that sort of stuff. And
I can answer that question if you want,
Sure.
in terms of whiteboarding. So for me, the thing that I look for when somebody is whiteboarding is not whether they come to the right solution. It's more of what their thought process is. So when you're whiteboarding, I want people to think and basically talk through their solution. So I can see, okay, this is how you were thinking. And that gives me two things. One is it lets me know whether you were thinking about the problem in different ways or whether you get stuck thinking about it in one way. I want people to be able to say, okay, I'm going down this path. Oh, I'm stuck at this path. I'm going to go back and I'm going to try a different way. And if you're thinking out loud, then it helps me understand whether you're doing that or not. And the second thing is it also lets me help you. If you're going down the wrong path, then I can give you hints and say, hey, maybe you don't want to do that. And then the question becomes, okay, are you aware enough to pick up on hints, to work with other people, to then change your thought process? If you don't take my suggestion and you keep going down the same path, then that's a problem. But if you're able to pick up on my suggestion and then change how you are thinking, then that helps to first solve the problem and also tells me that you'll be a good fit in the team, that you'll be a team player, that you'll be good to work with, and that you can actually think through different things. So that's kind of what the whiteboarding is for.
That's actually 100% right. Like I've heard people that because they talked out loud, they left interviews and they're like, man, I didn't get the problem. But because they talked out loud and listened to that feedback, and the interviewer knew like what they were thinking, and they could see it could be like one little thing that you could get hiccuped on, and the interviewer would see that and be like, oh, I know that could just be nerves or something like that. So helping talk out loud and talk through your thought process is huge.
Excellent. So just as a reminder to everybody, we'll have a live Q&A where you guys can ask the team any questions you want. But we want to run through an introduction of each of the teams that are represented. We have 2 more teams to go. Then I'm going to ask some sort of canned questions to do sort of a panel discussion to give you guys a better idea of the Microsoft culture. And then we'll have the live Q&A. So I'll try to leave plenty of time for you guys to ask questions. So thanks, Corey. Next, we'll jump into Microsoft Edge, which a lot of you guys should be familiar with. Microsoft Edge, the new browser, with Anthony Henderson. So Anthony, if you're ready. You're up next.
All right. Hey, everyone. How's it going? I did bring a presentation, and since I spent a decent amount of time on that, I will be sharing that with you all today. But first, I just want to introduce myself. So I'm Anthony Henderson. I have been at Microsoft for 9 years, as of this month, actually. I started out as a software development engineer and test, so I wrote test automation. That was after 2 internships, one in Office and then one in the Windows fundamentals team. Started out my full-time career at Microsoft working on the music and video apps for Windows 8. They never actually shipped. Some shuffling happened, and the Microsoft made a slightly different decision. And then eventually my team got folded into the Internet Explorer team. And then there was a huge transition at Microsoft, and we shifted over to a more data-driven culture. And my job title changed a whole bunch after that, but essentially what I would call that is data engineering. So working a lot with databases, data pipelines, data visualization. And then most recently I shifted to a traditional dev role on the new Microsoft Edge team. So lots of shifting around there, but I actually didn't have to really proactively switch teams. Microsoft did all that for me. So now on the new Edge team, as many of you are aware, we recently released a new version of Microsoft Edge built on Chromium. So that's what my team is responsible for. As many of you know, ever since browsers have become basically operating systems in and of themselves, so the team is actually quite large, and it's actually a cross-team or cross-company effort. So it's not just my team in Redmond. We actually have a much broader team across the world. We have counterparts in Paris, India, and I feel like I learn about new teams every day that are their core priority is actually to help us. So I'll go through my presentation, and if anything doesn't get covered, you can feel free to follow up with me at the end, Will. Make sure I get this going. Okay, can everyone see this presentation?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. All right, so just want to kind of give a lay of the land in terms of what the browser space really looks like. So as most of you, since you guys use your computers, not everyone uses their computer the same way, but across the board, browsing is by far the main activity that people do on their computers, and that is even on top of just their word processing, even coding, right? At the end of the day, you're going to go to the browser to be looking things up and all of that. So it's a huge investment for Microsoft and something that we really have to make sure that we get right. As many of the other panelists have mentioned, like Microsoft as a company, despite our initial investments in web technology, we are building a lot of our new products and services on web technology, rebuilding some of them, augmenting a lot of the other ones. And so you can see a lot of those products here. And outside of Microsoft, web technology has, of course, been embraced completely and fully. And that embracing has been accelerating over the years. A lot of companies have been shifting to web technologies because it helps them be more agile and address companies or customers on different platforms without having to rewrite their entire software stack. So Microsoft had an Edge browser, and then we released a completely different Edge browser. We used to build on Microsoft proprietary technologies, XAML, C++, CX, and a few other internal technologies. We've switched completely to the Chromium platform. That's the same as what Chrome is built on, as along with a lot of other Chromium-based browsers. And we are one of the largest, if not the largest contributor outside of Google back to the Chromium platform itself. So we're not just building Edge for ourselves to make it great for ourselves. We're contributing back improvements. We're contributing back our web expertise. We're contributing back our Windows expertise because we know Windows better than anyone else. Our accessibility improvements, we've been bringing those to the Chromium platform. And all while we improve all their Chromium browsers, we're trying to make sure that Edge is the best one out there. So we're bringing some differentiation ourselves as well.
Quick question.
Go ahead.
When did you guys make that jump over to Chromium?
That is incredible. I don't have an exact timeline in my head, but it was a very fast turnaround. Like, but I worked on IE11, and then we switched to making Edge on XAML, and we shipped that with Windows 10. But I feel like it's been, man, less than 2 years, but way less than that, really. Like, when I heard that we were considering this, from the time that I heard we were considering this and we were doing our initial investigations to the time when we were like, we're doing this, it was a insane turnaround. I'm still blown away that we were actually able to do that in such a short period of time. There's a lot more than people think that goes into it, and hopefully this will kind of flesh that out. But yeah, this product has not existed for very long, and it's impressive. So kind of give you guys an idea of how we're even able to ship this browser. We try to think of the Edge team, which is about six, actually more. That's the last time. Like, we're over 600 people. We have operations, so you can think of that as services as well, as our engineering systems. And we have the web platform, which is what you as developers will build on when you're using our products. And then the user experience, which you can think of as the browser itself. Operations, one of the things that's really core to our operations is our shipping schedule. So we have several channels. As developers, you guys are probably already aware of this, but we, on top of the stable channel that we ship to our traditional customers once every 6 weeks, we also have a beta and a dev channel, which is probably where you'll end up living as a developer. And then Canary, which is our daily builds that we ship every single day. That's the same one I use on all my machines because that's what has the freshest features. That has the things that someone just pushed the day before. But behind all of that, we have several cloud services that we've stood up in that short period of time as well. And those are constantly being updated, improved, and fixed and iterated on. So lots of effort across the team to make sure that this happens and that we are releasing the right fixes and the right improvements to the right people at the right time. There's a lot of stuff on this slide. Do not feel like you need to read it at all. But this is another core piece of how the Edge team runs. We are obsessed with making sure that we make our improvements, not just based on what we think should be on our roadmap, but what our customers actually want. So we're putting this initial browser out there, and then we are absolutely listening to customer feedback from several different channels. I doubt this is even the full list, right? And then some of the stuff is just, crash reports, right? And making sure that things are actually working on a fundamental level, but then really finding out like what customers are missing from the old version, what people are really looking forward to, what people really need in their different areas. And then we are informing all of those decisions and then iterating quickly throughout our browser release cycle. On the user experience side of things, again, there's depth behind all of these, but I try to make this a high-level overview. But we'd like to think of our customers in 4 groups. We have enterprise, consumer, developer, and then our education sector. I won't dive too deeply into these, but you can imagine that we have different focuses for each of these, right? So in the enterprise area, again, don't have to read all of this slide, but you get an idea that enterprise has a very different set of needs than our traditional customers, right? They need stability. They need to be able to know when things are coming. They need their fixes for security issues very quickly. So we need to make sure that we provide the most stable experience for them on top of what we already provide is a very stable experience for customers. They need predictability and they need to be serviceable because they're deploying these new versions of Edge to thousands of customers right inside of their companies. The platform. So this is, one of your questions, Will, was around like where we have most of the opportunities. This is where we have most of our open opportunities on the Edge teams on the platform side. And again, the platform is what developers build against, right? This is where you're writing your HTML, your JavaScript, your CSS. This is what you're building on to reach your customers. And this is where Microsoft really shines, right? Developers have always been our bread and butter. And so making the web platform amazing while making sure that we do not ever splinter the web is a huge endeavor for us. One of the things that you guys will see in the industry is this push towards progressive web apps, right? So if you go into Edge right now and you go to a website like Spotify, you can actually install that, really any website, but some websites are enhanced more than others. You can go and install that as an app on your machine. and you don't ever have to go and download anything. You can just use that as a web app on your machine as it is. But there are different layers to this, right? There's WebView, which is basically built, it's the web platform, but then you can kind of build your application in that and then package it and ship it wherever you need to ship it. And there's basically all the different options for developers. Some developers want a stable, like I know what version I'm using, I know what features are available to me. And a lot of developers want to work with an evergreen, always up to date version of the web platform. So we give all of those choices to our developers. And then behind the product is, of course, the team. So as I mentioned, this team is huge. We are split into, on the left-hand side, you'll see basically these are the teams that comprise the Edge team itself. Browser experience team is largely responsible for what you see as the actual browser Chrome. That's what team I'm on. There's browser services. We've stood up several cloud services to support the browser. You can think of, every time you do a search, every time you want to get an update, that kind of thing happens there. The HTML platform, again, that's the platform team that I was just talking about there. And you'll notice some of these are bolded and have a star. Those are the teams that we have opportunities, most of the opportunities available. And again, you don't have to copy this or anything like that. If you have questions, definitely reach out to the recruiters and we'll make sure we get you in contact with the right people. Okay. Across all of these teams, we really make sure that we are focusing on these kind of pillars. We, as a company, Microsoft is making sure that we are staying customer obsessed, right? One of the things that we want to make sure that we don't fall back into is this habit of just creating things just for the sake of creation and having them as a line item. We really want to make sure that we are contributing towards making our customers the best they can be, right? So fundamentals is huge. Nobody cares if your browser has a cool feature, if it doesn't work, if it's not fast, if it's not stable. And then customers are not going to be happy if we're not taking their privacy seriously. And then as a Chromium contributing browser team now, we have to make sure that we are good citizens of that community, right? That is a community that's been around long before us, or long before we joined. And we want to make sure that we have a positive impact on that community. And so a lot of the times we'll make a decision to make a fix or make a feature checking upstream in the Chromium base instead of just putting it in Edge, because it's something that we believe that the entire browser space should have. And that's always been a privilege. They're very welcoming. It's been a great experience. And then, across Microsoft, every single team has been amazingly supportive. It's actually been great to see over my time at Microsoft. I don't know if you guys have ever seen some of the graphics that people have put out about how Microsoft used to work as divisions, right? Very kind of hostile. That has changed a lot. The times that I've gone to other teams for help, Windows, our dev platform team, they've been always very willing to help, and they've come to us for help, and we've been able to set aside time for them. So definitely a lot more collaborative culture, and that's been really encouraging. That's, I think, one of the main things that's enabled us to turn around and ship this browser so fast. Tech stacks. I primarily use C++ every day. That's because I'm in the actual core development of the browser, but across the team, we actually have a lot of technologies that we use, and you can see those listed here. But again, as has been mentioned before, your familiarity with a particular language isn't as important as how you come to work and how you think and how you're able to learn, right? That's what you did in college. You learned how to learn, and now it's time to apply it. And I didn't want this to be some kind of footnote slide at the end, but I wanted to kind of add this in here because even though we're all coming into this, with this mind of where, engineers and we're going to apply our skills, Microsoft is not blind to the progress that it needs to make culturally. So within the Edge team, because it's so large, we've evolved to create communities within the team that people can come together and meet people that like them. So you can kind of, when you come into work, you have basically your corporate face, and you still keep that on a lot of the time. But sometimes you just need to kind of take the guard down a little bit and not have to explain yourself to people so much. So we have communities for people to do that. I started the local Edge BAM community, which is Black Set Microsoft within Edge. just so we can just have a space for us to be ourselves and not have to kind of preface everything that we say and what we're thinking. We can kind of just shoot the breeze and talk about what's on our minds. And then of course it's not always super serious stuff. We have Edge Squad, which is for early in career. So anybody that's just starting out, we have a community for them so they can kind of level up and get started. And then Mighty Mantra Mondays is actually just kind of a more fun thing where we get together every Monday and chat about things in the morning. But it's kind of that. And that's all I have for now. So if you have questions again, please reach out to the recruiters and we will definitely make sure that we get in touch with you. Well, did I cover everything?
Yes, except for I want to ask you, how did you end up coming to work for Microsoft?
Okay, so how did I end up coming to work for Microsoft? Is that what you asked?
Yes. Like, what was your path to Microsoft?
My path, fun path. So I met a recruiter at Microsoft at the University of Michigan, where I went to school. Managed to get an internship after trying a few times, and then so that was my first internship was with the Office team. I did not get a return offer from that internship, but I had such a great time. I knew I had to come back. So that summer I worked like 3 jobs. One of them was McDonald's. Another one was like my dad's friend. I was doing some software for the stock market. I don't know, lots of hustling. And at the end of that summer, I looked at like how much money I made working all those jobs that I was only semi-passionate about, and I was like, this is like nothing compared to what I got at Microsoft, and I'm definitely have to get back. So I did. I went back for a second internship after that summer, and I was in the Windows Fundamentals team. And to be quite honest, that was not where my passion lied at all. Like everything's prefixed fun, but it wasn't. It was for fundamentals. It was not actually that fun to me. But I knew what I wanted. I had my goal in sight, and so I made sure that I got a higher recommendation out of that. But there was a catch. When your hiring manager is saying, hey, like, I recommend this person, they're really only allowed to speak for them and their team, right? So I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to get my foot in the door. I'm going to work, and then I'm going to switch teams later on. But my manager saw straight through me. She already knew that I didn't, really wasn't as passionate about fundamentals as I was about user-facing products. And so I was actually given the opportunity. I went and worked with my recruiter, and I had made several connections over the course of that summer. And so I was actually basically able to go and talk to several people in the media space, because I really had a question for Microsoft. I was like, why do we have Zoom, Windows Media Center, and Windows Media Player? This is ridiculous. Like, pick one. And so I ended up speaking with several people and being able to actually pick the team that I wanted to be on. I basically interviewed while I was there, and they're like, all right, cool, you can come back. So that's how I got my full-time offer at Microsoft. And then the rest is history. I've been kind of riding the wave of reorgs at the company for 9 years.
And just for clarity, your current job title?
My current job title is software engineer.
Okay, perfect. All right, so unless you have anything else, I think we've got Edge, very impressive. So the next group is Microsoft Teams, which is a software that we're actually leveraging right now, which I think is super cool. So Keaton Lamba, if you're ready, we'll start with a little bit of background on Microsoft Teams.
Is Ketan there? If Ketan is not here, this is Debbie Misra here. I'm here. Well, is Ketan there?
It looks like he's not, at least not on the presenters list.
Okay, so yeah, I'll speak for Teams. So, all right, it's great to see 100 plus folks, and we continuing with this event in spite of the outbreak of the virus. That's amazing, and it's great to see all of you, and hope everybody is safe and staying safe. So my name is Debbie Misra. I am a director of engineering for Microsoft Teams, and that's what you're using. So you probably already are familiar with the product, but what you're using is just the meetings experience. The product Teams is about, communication, collaboration, documents, calendaring, presence, everything in the digital world that people need to do their work or even do at home or at school when, for being productive in the digital world, everything that you need. And to communicate and collaborate in the digital world, everything you need is in Teams. I think I just want to quickly talk a few things because there's a time constraint out there. What do engineers and teams do? They typically use C#, JavaScript, React, and build a huge app that sort of is the face of Office 365 in a way. It's a pretty large team distributed all over the world. It has teams in Bay Area, teams in Bangalore, India, teams in Prague, Europe. And right now, of course, we are experiencing amazing growth because it is what is being needed even more at times like this. Just last week, we announced today that we have added 12 million daily users over the last 10, 12 days period. So it's unbelievable. Coming back, I understand, I'll have lots of questions, but, just be yourself. Microsoft is looking for people who want to learn and are purposeful. So the kind of folks I look for are, people have energy, people have purpose, people have clarity, and they have the smarts to be able to learn and succeed. So our interview environment is going to be something like more of a team environment in the sense that we will be talking to you as if you're a member of the team, and which means, we are problem solving together. We are running ideas off you. So don't hesitate, reach out, ask, seek help as needed. It's a conversation. Just be engaged. That would be my ask. Don't hold back. Ask questions. Learn about Microsoft. If you don't think you're getting across, then make the interviewer help you and just make it as casual as it can be. About myself, because one of the questions is about how did I join Microsoft? I went to school in India. IIT is what I did my engineering from in computer science, and I decided not to leave India. I wanted to work in India, not come to US. And I was there for a couple of years, but then Bill Gates sent a gentleman called Nathan Myhrvold to India way back to hire 5 people from India, and Nathan hired me out of that. Even then, I debated, didn't accept the offer, stayed back. But 5 years after that, I changed my mind and contacted back Microsoft and came over here. I've been here for 24 years, so it's been a long time. Been, all across. I started with Windows NT making Windows NT a distributed operating systems. Then was one of the people who started .NET. Then went on to build various products. And before coming to Microsoft Teams, I started what became our machine learning product group, Azure Machine Learning. So yeah, long time in Microsoft, loved it. Love Microsoft. The simple reason I'm here is, this company gives me an amazing opportunity to make an impact on the world. Where else can I go and do things that millions and to billions of people use? When I first joined the company, we shipped Windows. I used to pinch myself that, millions of people actually are using the code I wrote. I couldn't believe it at that time. I was also surprised when, long back, maybe about 20 years back, the first intern in my team was from University of Warsaw in Poland. And I used to wonder, do we really need to go all the way to Eastern Europe to hire an intern? Can we find it right here in Seattle? So that is how broad-minded Microsoft has been, highly diverse in getting talent from all over the world and from every corner of the world. And that's primarily what about it. And from a company point of view, the other thing that's remarkable is we're across the entire technology, space. We don't just build apps, just don't do for consumer. If you see, we build for developers, consumer businesses. We build operating systems to productivity apps to all kinds of things. We are sort of a champion of the entire computing industry in a way, and we work in an ecosystem manner. We worry about curriculum for computer science courses in universities, to even whether there are universities teaching computer science or not, and how do we get that adoption? Now, how do we? So we are across the board, and that's what I'm really super proud of when I'm working for this company. Hope you guys have a great time. Any questions? Let me know, and others here.
One question about the technology stack. Like, what are software engineers? What technologies will they have their hands on? What languages does Teams use?
So Teams would across everything. We're a product that has a significant server-side work and significant client-side work. We are on all platforms. We are on Android, iOS, on Windows, on other desktop, on web, on Mac, and primarily on that it's JavaScript, React Native, and native platform or on iOS and Android as needed. And on the server side, it's a lot of stack, massive amount of open source, significant our own internal Azure stack. And in languages, as I said, it's C#, .NET, and JavaScript and React. Primarily, there is some C as well. But as everybody else said, we're looking for folks who want to learn and can learn and make an impact. One doesn't necessarily have to have known everything that we are working on. So that's and I hope that answers it.
Excellent. Yeah, so I think you answered all of my questions, and for the sake of time, I think we'll jump into just a couple of panel questions for the team, and anybody can kind of chime in from the Microsoft team to answer some of these questions, and then we'll just jump into the Q&A, the live Q&A from the folks that have been dropping some questions in the chat. So first, I had a few questions, because what I want to make sure we do is give people an idea of the Microsoft culture, what they can expect if they actually have the opportunity to consider a job offer from Microsoft. So if any of you can speak to, if you consider, we have folks from all over the country on the call, a lot of them in the South and in the Texas area, as we were going to have the event in Austin originally. But for those of you that, they have, most of the opportunities are at headquarters, right, in Redmond. If you could speak to what it was like to relocate to the area, some of the things that you like about the area, and also if there are other opportunities, like for example with the current environment with the coronavirus, is Microsoft shifting to look at remote opportunities, for example. But if anybody can speak to, first of all, opportunities in Redmond and what it was like for you guys to relocate if you had to.
Don't everybody jump in first.
I
can speak to it a little bit too. Because I'm actually coming from, born and raised out of New Orleans. My family's from Mississippi, so I'm a country boy at heart. And I spent a little bit of time in Virginia too. So I'll tell you straight, blunt force. If you're from the South or you live in y'all are, I assume many of you are in Austin because that was the original venue for this meeting. From Texas to Seattle, that's going to be a culture shock. I can tell you that now. But it's a pleasant culture shock. Like, it's different. It's not bad, right? It's just that you're going to run into something new. You've got plenty fish everywhere. There's tons of outdoors activity. Like, if there is nothing else Washington, the Pacific Northwest is known for, it is outdoors activities. Now, speaking as a Black person coming up here, you're gonna have a culture shock there too, in that for other reasons, I've actually looked up this stat before. The Black population in the Pacific Northwest is 2%. So we're a drop in the water. But in the context of Microsoft, that's actually like not that big a deal, because Microsoft, as Debbie was saying earlier, is already like very diverse just from a every culture standpoint. Like where I in the single neighborhood, because we're in an open space plan that I sit in, I've got folks from Taiwan, I've got folks from Beijing, I've got actually someone whose parents is from Wuhan, so we're being like cognitive of that. Got some folks from that live in Gujarati and from Bangalore. You got me from New Orleans. I got a buddy who's from Wisconsin. So all over the place. So the thing that like I've found with that is, at least in the orgs I've been able to sit in, you're already there's a bunch of cultures not clashing. It's not the right word. You've already got a melting pot anyway. So you're going to have a bunch of perspectives around you, and there's no kind of quote unquote normal that you have to figure out how to integrate with. We actually want you to come in and be like, I learned about Diwali when I first joined the team, which is the Festival of Lights, the Indian Festival of Lights. It was awesome. We actually celebrated it. I do a Mardi Gras thing every year, and we're to the point now where whoever gets the baby has to buy next year's king cake, and things like that. So, and one more thing, and then I'll leave it. I'll let someone else chime in. The company is very much on board with we call them employee resource groups. So Corey mentioned it earlier, and so did Anthony. The Blacks at Microsoft, that's one of the first. What it actually is, the original employee resource group, and there's a bunch of chapters within every single one of these orgs. And just like Anthony said, he actually made one in Edge. And a buddy of mine, another buddy from Xavier, we made one in OXO. So we have that too, and I'm actually organizing a thing for kind of a let's make sure all our mental health is okay. So that type of stuff is not only happening, it's supported and encouraged. We've got a bucket of money from our CVP to spend on making our ERG and making a cultural place for us. And that it happens for Latinx. They have a group called Ola. They have women. It's a great company to be at, especially in the context of minorities, because we recognize there is a Satya level push straight on down the company, diversity and inclusion and belonging.
Yeah, well said, Larry.
Thank you. So we'll jump into, I think you pretty much covered that one. So I thought something that's really, really cool. So one thing that I thought was really, really cool is that we're using Microsoft products as, on a day-to-day basis, those of us that are, using Windows environment, and we're using Microsoft products right now to handle this virtual event. And even, from the different groups that are here, like I see an integration of technologies that we're using to make this happen through the different teams that are represented. So the question that I wanted to ask, so that I thought might be a good discussion point, where a lot of industries are concerned with the current coronavirus issue, right? A lot of industries are getting hit, are worried about getting hit because, people shutting down and things of that nature. Whereas I see Microsoft and some of the products that we're using now as being needed even more right now. So have there been talks within Microsoft and any of your teams to prepare for that additional need for the services that you guys provide based on the additional demand?
I'll speak to that. We are in a very different world. You won't believe, about a week and a half before, Microsoft even advised its employees to work from home. The entire team's team was asked to work from home. And I will tell you why. It wasn't because we needed to work from home because the virus outbreak in Seattle was much at that time. It wasn't. We realized that it might be that things around us might become bad enough. And unless we know how to work from home and keep our products up, we don't want to experiment with that. So we mandated that anybody who is an on-call engineer or supporting the service or any of that work only from home so that we can keep the business of the world going. And for that, we need to keep our business continuity. We started about 10 days before Microsoft officially asked people that they can work from home. And I've been actually home for now almost 2.5 weeks plus. So, and it's been incredible. In Italy, we opened up our freemium that you can sign up for free teams. We used to limit, completely opened up. In Italy, in one day, we got almost the signups we had in the past many months. In China, our meetings volumes have grown about 7, 8 times. In our daily usage has gone up massively. It's not necessarily only because of new users. There are a lot more people using it, but much more importantly, the people who are using it a lot more. Previously, some users would do some meetings in person and some online. But today, everybody is doing all the meetings. So, and it's not just how our users are using. We are being, imagine that many countries at the country level have to take decisions about, hey, how does the education system run? How does the healthcare system run? And things like that. And Microsoft may be called up and to help at that level as well. And there's a lot of focus going on inside the company as to how to first go and make sure we are more careful about what the society needs at this moment and how we can help there. To that end, we have opened up a lot of freemium users of the products and ease that, trying to make it very easy for schools to be able to remote. So doing a lot of that. The question you asked also is how are we preparing? We are almost working right now on a war footing. We are almost on a 24-hour nonstop watching, monitoring, because a lot of the world depends on us, and we really need to help stand it up. So it's crazy times. We have never experienced anything like that.
So I think it's safe to say that all of the teams here represented still have great hiring needs in the face of the current situation.
I would think independent of that. I think the current situation is very bad. We want it to go away, but it's. I think the whole technology industry as a share of the GDP has been growing constantly from the time I left college. I've never seen it go down. So the technology industry becomes a bigger and bigger part of the GDP every year, and that just tells you that we'll be hiring disproportionately more people than any other industry.
Okay, so for the sake of time, I want to open it up for Q&A. And I'm sure some of the Q&A that comes in will probably cover some of the questions that I had for the panel discussion. So for those of you that have questions for the teams that we have represented here from Microsoft, please drop your questions in the notes section here in Microsoft Teams. And I will go ahead and start reading some of those questions off for the team. So one of the earlier questions was related to a technology that was mentioned, Kubernetes, cluster management software. How much of the DevOps platform is used, and which team was that uses that?
I mentioned it. Okay. It's we're investigating using it just for containers in general. Kubernetes is just a containers technology. But we're always, as everybody said, we're always investigating ways to make everything better. Like my job as a service engineer is to write code that makes my job unnecessary, but there's always something new to solve. So we're continuously finding new ways to make our jobs unnecessary. Such as like when you go from bare metal to Azure, now you've got a whole orchestration problem that you've got to deal with because Azure is just sitting there waiting for you to tell it what to do. It has some auto scale mechanisms here and there, but like you're interrelating services and you've got to keep them all running as a one uniform suite of things. So Kubernetes is one of the things we're investigating just as a deployment platform. And as far as Azure DevOps, that's where my infrastructure as a code repo literally lives. Like I'm in there every day. We have an internal source repository, source control repo, but there's a company-wide push. I'll just tell you, it's fine. That's why we bought Git to move all of that repo into Git repos, just because it's the wave of the future. So one of our most recent hires in my quote-unquote neighborhood, he's a Git. That's what he lives and breathes Git. Like he uses the command line. I use the fancy extensions that are in Visual Studio and VS Code, just because I don't want to mess around with the Git command line. But that's Git ADO. It's integral to what we do every day.
Cool. Earlier there was a question directed at Corey, and the question was, what has been most challenging for you in your journey at Microsoft?
Yes. I'm actually going to extend this to everybody too. But personally, challenging. Two things have been challenging for me is reorgs, like the uncertainty that comes with it. Which kind of leads into the other one. I'm really a guy like, give me a problem, I'll go into my little silo and I'll work on it, and I don't care about what's going on in the outside world. That has become a problem because being that Microsoft has a whole bunch of smart people, that you can go down a rabbit hole of one way of thinking when you really should like talk with your peers, open up, like tell them about what you're working on. They could give you ideas and not just focus in on a problem, think I'm the only person that can solve it. But reorgs has been difficult because kind of the uncertainty, like I actually grew up here in Seattle, working for Microsoft. I'm going to stay here my whole life, kind of a default path. But you throw in reorgs, like, wait, what's going to happen? I didn't start at OneDrive. I started over at like Windows Live section, and then we came over into OneDrive. But having really transparent conversations with your manager about like, hey, I'm worried about this, and they can put a lot of those worries at ease. But those two things have been most challenging, just like not getting in a silo of work and ignoring the outside world, and then having that uncertainty and just dealing with it by yourself.
Excellent. So I have another question here. Actually, there's a lot of great questions, but so one here that I liked is cultural question. Knowing what you know now in your current role and how long you've been at Microsoft, what would you advise your younger self when you were first starting out at Microsoft?
It's actually literally following up on Corey. What he said is the challenging thing is one of his challenges is you don't want to be in a silo. Like we used to all have offices, and they're kind of redoing the entire campus to be open space to encourage that. Don't just sit in your little room with your headphones and your music going, just I'm hammering on the keyboard and I'm solving that problem. No. That's part of it. You got to actually write the code at some point. But you want to be turning around and saying, hey, I've got so-and-so XYZ happening. I'm thinking about this. Because a lot of cases, and this is, I'll kind of pepper in like sort of topical answers to what I'm seeing going by in the channel. One of the things that we actually look for in measuring your, like, how do you move forward in your career is how much impact did you have across the your org or your business. So when you're working on a problem, it actually behooves you both from solving the problem in the most efficient and best way, and for your career development, to look around you and say, okay, guys, I've got this problem space. What are some solutions that are available? Because someone might go, like, they came from OneDrive and say, oh, yeah, we had to solve that exact problem. That code's sitting in this repo over here. You just go pick that up, adapt it to yours, and now you've saved yourself 2 weeks of dev time. And then you can, like, actually work on generalizing it so someone else can pick it up as a framework instead of having to adapt it. And so just kind of making yourself open to different ideas and soundboarding all the time. And that's kind of the interview feedback too, what Debbie was saying. Be vocal, ask questions, say, I'm thinking about this. I feel like that it'll help this way, but maybe there's other alternatives that I haven't, they're nascent and I haven't formed. So I hope that kind of addresses a couple of topics going on. And I know other folks have ideas here too.
So I had another good question here. This one's from Ronald Wilson, and I'll kind of embellish on it a little bit. So related to the technologies, right? So you get somebody on the team that maybe is familiar with C++, but then there's all these new technologies that are always coming out and evolving. So maybe Anthony or Venkat can speak to this one. But how are you expected to come up to speed with new technologies as they come out? Does Microsoft provide any type of training, or are you expected to basically use a percentage of your time to come up to speed with the different languages and technologies you're using?
So I can take that one. It's generally on-the-job learning, right? So you will learn things that are needed to do your particular job. When you change roles, you learn new things. So, for example, in my team, we used to use ASP.NET before, a while ago, and then we decided to go to Angular. At that point, everybody in my team had to learn Angular. And at some point, we decided to go to React. And at that point, everybody had to learn React. So when we have change in tech like that in our tech stack, then we do spend time making sure that everybody is up to speed and everybody can learn that. But within React, we've had different things happen, right? So React hooks was released recently. We don't yet use hooks in our code, but there are different people in the team that have taken it on themselves to go learn about hooks and see how we can integrate it within our system and how we can use that. So it really depends on the state of the team and what we need to do. Well,
I'm sorry, I was on mute. So this is a follow-up question for you related to customer success engineering. How often do developers or software engineers have to interact with customers? And this also may be an interesting question for other groups to chime in as well.
Yeah. So engineers, we actually try to interact with customers. That's the best way to learn, right? So it's not like we are giving support to customers, but we want to talk to customers as much as possible. So within our products, customers leave feedback, and we respond to that feedback because we want to talk to customers and understand what their problems are and learn more about problems so we can actually solve them. So it's not a requirement that you talk to customers, but we highly encourage people to talk to customers so you know what you're working on and how that is impacting customers.
All right, next question. And this is, I really want to get at some of the cultural questions because a lot of the different teams spoke to the technologies, but from a what to expect perspective. So one of the questions here is, what is the onboarding process like for new engineers? So you bring in an experienced hire that has several years of experience writing code in whatever language, and they come to join one of your teams at Microsoft. Is the onboarding process uniform across the company for the different teams, or do each of you guys have different onboarding processes?
I can speak a little bit to that. So there is a unified onboarding process across the team, across the company, right? There's what we call NEO, which is new employee orientation, and that has changed as people have been onboarded remotely. But that's basically like the baseline, like welcome to Microsoft. And then from there, everything is unique to the team, right? So Microsoft kind of runs a lot of how it operates in a very federated fashion, right? So every team is empowered to make sure that they can kind of welcome you into their unique culture, right? You can imagine that the culture that our gaming orgs are trying to espouse is going to be very different than the culture that we are trying to grow on the Edge team or in the SharePoint team, right? there's definitely some core values that Microsoft has, and those are definitely shared across the company. But then there are some things that, people want to make sure kind of match the product or the services that they're building, right? There's some, different levels to it, right? So on my team in Edge, we have what's called Edge Squad. And it's for people who are early in career. So there's an additional onboarding. Once you get into the team, you're connected with mentors and other people who are new to the company and new to the team, so that you can have that network. And there's like the whole notion of like, no question is too simple. Like, come with your questions. We're here to help and make sure that you get started off on the right foot. And that's through your like entire initial like level, and first at least 6 months into the joining the team. So other teams have similar processes, but they basically look to see like what are the needs of the people joining our team and how can we help get them started.
Okay, so this is, I think, a pretty good and sort of important question for candidate experience. And this might be, so for those of you guys in HR that are on the call, you might want to chime in on this. If not, one of the organization representatives, you guys might know as well. But you guys fall under an umbrella, right? E&D, correct? So
that is correct.
So from a candidate experience, if a candidate says, well, I could potentially have interest in OXO, or I could have interest in CSE, and I want to interview and work for Microsoft, I'd be happy to work for either team or one of the different teams. From an interview experience perspective, how does a candidate get funneled into, from a process perspective, interviewing with Microsoft and then getting aligned with a team and then aligned with the position? So if any of you guys could speak to that, including someone, maybe Mark from the HR team.
Can everybody see me?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I'm a recruiter myself, been with Microsoft since November. And yeah, to kind of answer that question, the way that we do it is that we go ahead and have the candidate interview, whether it's their resume or not. And let's say you go through the interview process. We do give individuals, opportunities to interview with multiple teams, if we do have multiple teams that are interested. So, we go ahead and pass that profile along to another team. If a team is interested, we're open to doing either split loops to where we'll have one candidate interview with 2 teams in one day, or we do separate interviews. So you can have, back-to-back day interviews. Pretty much from there, just for the candidate experience, we really like to give them the option to kind of see, what their interests align. So we'll set up, let's say, 2 sale calls with both teams that you'll get to speak to a hiring manager. They'll be able to answer all the questions for you about, exactly what 2020 is looking like, what you'll be working on, how the promotions work, what's the team makeup. And then from there, we let the candidate get the opportunity to pick where they want to move forward. And then from there, go to the offer process.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, most definitely.
And so we're coming up towards our time being up for the call, but I have good news. So for some of you guys that maybe connected to the call a little bit after we got started, this particular presentation is being recorded. So I'll sync up with the Microsoft team and get the link, and then provide you guys with a link where you can view the entire presentation, especially with the content related to the different organizations that are represented and what they're responsible for and the type of talent that they hire. So I'll share that with everyone with a follow-up email after we finish. And also, there is a URL that I set up that will direct you to the interview interest form for the E&D team. So all of the different organizations that are represented, there's actually an interview interest form that we hope that you will submit if you are interested in interviewing for opportunities with one of the teams. And then, of course, make sure you use this URL, because we'll collect your resume first and then we can follow up on your behalf. And we can also align you with future opportunities with Microsoft for some of the upcoming events that we have for different organizations like Azure Dedicated and CSEO. So with respect to time and, an appreciation for everybody jumping on the call, taking time out in their evening to learn more about Microsoft, to learn more about the opportunities that are available. I am going to basically end the presentation. So we're, try to stay on time and respect everybody's time. But just remember, you do have access to me if you have additional questions, because a lot of the questions that I saw in the chat are questions that I can answer offline and maybe create an online question and answer for you guys to kind of consume after the event. And then of course, if you are interested in interviewing, I will send everybody a link. And what I'll do right quick is put that link in the chat so that you guys have access to it. It's basically hbcuconnect.com/microsoft/experiences-devices. Okay, so appreciate everybody from Microsoft. If there's anybody from Microsoft that wants to say any last, share any last thoughts with the attendees, I'll open it up for you guys.
Real quick, I'm seeing a lot of questions in here, and I can't get to all of them. There are a lot of really good questions, and like Will said, you'll probably be able to answer a lot of them. If there are any that are more specific to just life and working at Microsoft or moving to Seattle or anything like that, you can feel free to at least connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll try and get back to you in a relatively timely fashion. If you have questions about recruiting and open positions, then definitely work with the recruiters. That's already been kind of set up for you. But otherwise, it's been great virtually meeting all of you, and hope everyone is staying safe.
Oh, and I'll pile on just a little bit myself. Just kind of speaking to the culture again. This type of event actually is pretty frequent. I went down to Afrotech and we had a big booth there, and we were hiring directly out of Afrotech. We go to NSBE every year. We go to Grace Hopper. This is not an uncommon event. So this is the type of stuff that if you go ahead and do the interview and you get an offer and you're lucky enough to come on over and work for Microsoft, we absolutely look to you to come join us in doing this type of event and proselytizing out, hey, Microsoft is awesome, come work for us.
Excellent.
I'm going to piggyback off of what Anthony said. I'm the only Corey Twaits on LinkedIn. So if you want to add me, hit me up, send me a message. I'll do my best to answer it.
Okay, so what I'll do is I will share the. Some of you are saying that some of the links aren't working. I'll make sure that the links are correct. So if they're not working, I'll make sure that they're working as soon as we get off the call. But I'll also share the LinkedIn profiles of the team that's here, so that you guys can kind of network. In lieu of not being able to network personally. And that's another cool thing. Microsoft owns LinkedIn. So the great company for you guys to have the opportunity to network with. This is a special event for a special audience. We appreciate you guys. And like I said, I'll follow up everybody. The email that I use to reach out to you guys, if you reply back to it, it comes right to me. And so myself or someone on my team will make sure you get answers, and we'll help you get connected with Microsoft and potentially interview if there's a fit. So big, huge thanks to Microsoft, because there's a lot of companies that we work with that are basically shutting down operations, considering what's going on with the coronavirus and everything. And Microsoft has basically stepped up to say, hey, we still have opportunities. We still want to connect with the talent. So instead of canceling our on-site events, we're doing innovative things using their innovative technology, just like this. So thank you guys for making it happen. So for everybody that attended, thanks to the Microsoft team for taking the time out to help as well. And I will follow up with everyone via email, and look forward to the next event. Salute. Take care. Everybody be safe and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.